Today we thought we'd talk about pedestrian crossings, and this comes after a thread that Laura kindly put up during the week, asking about what people teach on crossings. I think it was predominantly zebra crossings, and what they would teach about carrying on when there's someone still on the crossing. So this is sort of where this has come from, but I'll come on to that in a bit. So as always, these chats are about knowing the essential skills, knowing what it says, and more importantly, realising what it doesn't say and what it means when it says certain things. So we'll come on to what I'm talking about there. So as always, it's a case of reading it, but reading between the lines and not necessarily, as I say, believing in. I don't really mean that, but not necessarily thinking that everything your trainer says is correct, basically, because the essential skills is down to interpretation, of course, and that interpretation can be different for each people. So I'm going to go through what I think and what me and Lou think today about certain things, and you may or may not buy into that. Your pupils will be the same. And the problem with saying you must do something that actually isn't a rule is, one, you'll get picked up on a Part 3 or standards check, and two, pupils now do have access to the internet. They will be able to look things up, and they will question it, and they will question you, and that can be quite awkward if you are incorrect, or not making something up, but making something they have to do when they don't have to do it. And you're taking away thinking drivers, you're taking away common sense, you're taking away people really rationalising why we're doing things and why we're not doing things. There's some good points made on that thread, but they can all be questioned. This is the point I want to make, really. They can all be questioned in some way or another by using logic and using common sense. And we want people not to be robots and have particular rules, because particular rules don't work all the time. But I'll come on to that in a second. So let's just go through the essential skills, because it's not just about that one thread. So pedestrian crossings, page 184. The bit I want to point out here is you must not overtake the moving vehicle nearest the crossing, the leading vehicle that has stopped to give way to a pedestrian. So again, I want to clarify what that really means. So the moving vehicle nearest the crossing, so you can't overtake the bus that's coming up to the crossing, even if it's 2 lanes. Let's say it's 2 lanes in the same direction. You can't overtake another vehicle, the front vehicle, while it's moving across the crossing, because of course you can't see very well. Also worth pointing out at this point, when they say vehicle, they don't mean bicycles. And when you look at the legislation, it makes a point in there that vehicle does not mean bicycle. Bicycles are not classed as a vehicle for the purpose of this language. Okay, so you can overtake a bicycle that's a front vehicle, not vehicle, whatever you want to call it. Complicated, isn't it? If there's a bike at the front, you can overtake it on a crossing or on approach to a crossing. I would say you want to try and avoid that if possible, but you can, in theory. The reason you can overtake a cyclist is because you can see round it invariably. If there's other obstructions or you can't see around it for whatever reason, then you wouldn't go past. But if you can see clearly past it, there's nothing coming the other way, there's no pedestrians near the crossing or approaching the crossing, there's nothing wrong with overtaking the cyclist, and you would be expected to do so on a Part 2 or a hour test if the situation allows you to do so safely. And this phrase comes up all the time, safely, and it's your judgment of what safety is and what you're going to teach what safety is. You could just say, well, let's just never overtake a cyclist, because that would be the safest thing. Maybe, maybe not. And the reason I say maybe not is because there might be another vehicle behind you that gets a bit annoyed because you or your learner are sitting behind a cyclist when it's clearly clear, clearly safe. Then they go for it, and then that could make the whole situation more dangerous. So you have a sort of a duty of care to other people. Yes, you can't control other people, but you can sort of control to a certain degree what they're likely to do by your actions. And that's really important when you're teaching. Be aware of what you're teaching and how that affects other people. So always stopping at giveaway lines, for example, is a classic. It's going to choose people off when you don't need to stop at a giveaway line, if it's safe to carry on, of course. The leading vehicle that has stopped to give way to pedestrians. So I can think of some pedestrian crossings or zebra crossings, near where I used to live in Portsmouth, in Cosham in Portsmouth. And I say that because some people might relate to that here. There's a roundabout, and it's called the compass roundabout, because it directly faces north, east, south, west, but it doesn't really matter. You come up to that roundabout, there's zebra crossings on two of the ways onto the roundabout, and at one point there's 3 lanes. And the lane for straight on is always busy because of where it goes and where it comes from. And invariably the examiners turn you left at that roundabout. If you didn't go past the car waiting at the crossing but he was not waiting for pedestrians, just waiting because of secure traffic, you could fail your L test for it, and you'd certainly be marked down for hesitancy. So what you do in that situation is you treat the giveaway line like a stop line. So you stop, you make proper observation, if you can see past the vehicle, of course, and then you carry on. You don't stop. You don't just stop and wait for that vehicle to move off, because when they move off, you can't really see when they're moving off anyway. So it's about logic. That's what I'm trying to get across. It's about logic and about sort of using common sense, really, and being able to bring that across to your pupils. So you can read the rest. I'm going to go through that. So let's get on to let's just see if there's anything else, really. The other thing I would say is I don't really worry about the different types of crossing. Pupils need to learn the types for their theory, which I don't agree with. But basically, when do you stop? Where do you stop? When do you go? Simple as that. And if you look at all the light control crossings, they're all the same, except for pelican that flashes, and then that's the same as a zebra that also has a flashing amber light, and that's why they both have flashing amber lights. The rules are then the same, which we'll get onto now. So the main thread, if you didn't see it, was whether you've got a zebra crossing, if you were waiting and someone walked from your left to your right and they've gone past the front of your vehicle, would you carry on or would you wait for them to get to the other side of the road? And a lot of people saying you wait to get to the other side, because if they drop their keys or they come back, they suddenly realise they've forgotten the dog or the child or something like that. They come back, you won't run them over. And that is a valid point. I'm not poo-pooing that point at all. But the bottom line is you proceed when it's safe. You don't have to wait for people that have walked past you. Once they've walked past your vehicle, you can carry on. And people use this as a sort of a tool to say, no, you must wait. And the phrase is, you must give way to anyone who is already crossing, has stepped onto the crossing. That's what it says in Essential Skills. And the legislation says similar. I did look up the word just now and I've forgotten it already. Precedence. You must give precedence to the, whatever that means, precedence to the people on the crossing. What that basically means, I've looked it up, is that you must give way to the people on the crossing. Exactly as it says here, they just use a proper word in the DES. But what that means is you must give way to them. It doesn't mean you must wait for them to go into the shop, buy their sweets and come back out again. Being sarcastic. You've got to make sure you can't run them over. So it's about using common sense and using judgment. We want to teach pupils to use judgment. So the argument is, as I say, they might turn around and run back, etc., etc., and they may well do. But then they're unlikely to do that without any sort of clues. So, for example, if I saw 3 kids on the pavement on the left, 2 cross, and the other one's just loitering and waiting, I'd probably wait, because they might come back for their mate, or their mate might suddenly decide to make progress. The argument is that, as I say, they could come back. But let's turn it on its head. When someone walks from the right to the left, once on the pavement, if we're happy they're going to stay on the pavement, we carry on, don't we? They're only probably that far from your car, but you carry on because you have perceived they're not going to walk back. Why can't we do the same when they're going to the right? It's no different. We wouldn't wait when they step on the pavement to go into Woolworths and do their shopping. We'd make a judgment. So why can't we make a judgment when they walk right to left? There's no difference. It's about judgment. It's about teaching judgment, because if we teach one fits all, you must wait until the person gets, and this is what the examiners will say to you, it's not just me being sarky, is if you say to a pupil on a part 3, you must wait till the pedestrian gets off the pavement onto the pavement the other side, the examiner says, okay, so we always wait for a pedestrian to get on the other side. Yeah, we always do that. Okay, fine. So you have someone crossing in front of you that has a mobility issue, is very, very slow, and it's a wide road. Are you going to wait for them to get all the other side? And you would probably come back and say, well, not in that situation, because it's obvious they can't run back. True. So why can't we use judgment in all situations? And if we're going to use judgment in one situation, we must use judgment in all situations. Does that make sense? If you think a pupil struggles with judgment, and that is possible, then it's a really good learning opportunity. The problem with saying we must always wait for this, that and the other, whatever it may be, is there are always going to be situations where your pupils or an SE or an examiner is going to say, yeah, but what about this? And pupils will do it too. And then that can lose your credibility and all that sort of stuff. So it's about making them think. And if we're looking to see if those kids on their bicycles or those kids going across the crossing or whoever it is are going to come back, what are we looking at? We're looking at them. We're making judgments. We're looking at the right place at the right time. If we just wait until they're going to get the other side and they're going quite slowly, etc., then our mind's going to start wandering. We're not going to start looking around for anyone else entering the crossing from the left because we're too much concentrating on the people going to the right, for example. We're not really looking around, we're not making judgments, and that's the main point. Is we want to teach pupils to make judgments rather than be robotic and just always do this. So I don't know, another example would be when you stop at a pedestrian crossing, always put a handbrake on and put it into neutral. Show me. It doesn't say it. It's nowhere does it say that. Would it be better if there was vehicles coming up behind to have your foot on the foot brake? Because it's a nice three bright lights to the rear, and you've got more power with the foot brake than you have a handbrake or parking brake. So you can see there's other ways of thinking around things rather than we must always do this, must always do that. If I've got no one in front and I've got someone coming up quite fast behind me, I can flash the brake lights, and then I would come off the brake lights. So if they hit me, I'll get pinged up the road, and not all the energy goes into me, it goes into moving the car up the road. If there's no one in front of me, you could then argue if there's no one in front, why have I stopped? But it's just an example. Let's say we were in traffic in that situation. So, or the people stalled, for example. So the point I'm trying to make is that we're trying to make judgments all the time. We're trying to think outside the box. I hate that phrase, but can't think of another one at the moment. We're trying to sort of look at the whole situation and what makes sense, really, rather than what is the rules. And quite often the things we're teaching aren't the rules at all, and that's the main point. I thought something else when I was talking there and I've forgotten now. Okay, any questions on that thing?
A motorbike examiner who in Swindon who'd fail you if you started to move and there's something hasn't got to the side.
Okay, well I'd like to have a conversation with that person.
They can't hear me saying that.
So, what someone's saying is there's a motorbike examiner in Swindon that would fail you if you don't wait for the person to get to the other side. I'd like a chat with that person because that's incorrect, and that's an appeal all day long because that doesn't fit what it says in legislation or the rules. And I certainly know of examiners that will fail you if you don't progress, and will say to you, come on, let's go, because someone's going to step off on the left in a minute, particularly in a busy high street or something. So we're always going to get these things that people say that this examiner says that. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but I would be questioning it because it's not correct. Cool.
Can you clarify, by crossing, do you mean the zebra crossing, the zebra controlled area when overtaking?
Don't understand a bit. So the question is something like, clarify what the crossing is when overtaking. It's the whole crossing, and you can overtake if it fits these rules. I'm not saying for a second you should. What I'm saying is that you shouldn't tell people they can't, because there are situations that you can. But when they say the area, it means from the pavement on the left to the pavement on the right, or if there's bollards in the middle for a zebra crossing, from the pavement to the bollards. If it's a pedestrian crossing or any of those other types, the straight is from one side to the other. Again, the bollards don't count unless they're staggered. See if I can get them up. Okay. Just in mind about that motorbike examiner, whether that's motorbikes only or whether that's cars as well, because the rule still applies to, whether it's either it doesn't matter. There's obviously that person's got a thing about that, but it's not correct. I think there may be a situation where he failed someone once, and it could have been that someone was turning around, someone was larking about, someone gave him the impression they might come back, and then they carried on. So there's probably more to that than meets the eye, because examiners are regularly checked, and that's something that would come up if they was failing people in that situation all the time, because it's not correct. So there possibly is more to that than was told to you or whatever, because it doesn't seem quite right. And you're always going to, whenever we say anything like this, we always get people that say yes, but there's an examiner, this, that and the other. We always hear that, and then we dig into it more and look at it more and talk to the examiners that we know at all levels, and it doesn't seem to be the case. So it's interesting, but you have to take localisms into account to a certain degree, but don't necessarily believe all the stories. The story may be from you, it might be something that happened to you, but if it's told you through a third party, don't necessarily believe everything you're told, or you may not be told the whole situation, if that makes sense. Okay, so anything else? I think I've covered that enough. But I'm happy to be, challenged. It's not a problem at all. Give you another few seconds to put anything else in there. There may be a particular crossing, for example, that's quite thin, for example, quite narrow, and people have a tendency to come back for whatever reason. There may be something like that in it. But if you've got a really wide crossing and the people, I don't know, 3/4 way across, why are you waiting? Because if they did turn around and come back, they're going to run into you, not you running to them. They're going to come into the side of the car, not in a position where you can run them over.
This is why there's a massive problem in this industry when it comes down to the examiner's opinion. It's just not fair. Examiner's opinions are different. They're not as different.
No, they're not as different as it may seem.
People can't hear.
Oh, right. This is why there is a massive problem in this industry. It always comes down to an examiner's opinion. It's just not fair. Examining opinions are different. We don't find that as much. There are localisms, but as I say, I would always point those out. And it's quite a brave thing to do if you're a PDI particularly, or new to the industry, and all you guys are, that it's difficult, isn't it, to go up to an examiner and say, why have you done that? This guy that I know tells me that you can carry on as long as you're not going to run them over. It's awkward. But what you can do is, it depends how you come at it. So what you can come at it from is, you could say, oh, that's interesting. Why is that then? Well, why do we have to wait till they're all the way off? Because when they walk off to our left, they're only a foot from the car and they could still get run over, or something like that. You could sort of question it in could you just let me know more about that? As like you're asking for their opinion on it. There's nothing wrong with then going to a test centre manager and saying, well, Fred is saying this, but Fred is saying he's failing people for going when someone's not on the pavement, and George is telling people to go because there's people coming from the left and we want to crack on. Which is it? If you're dealing with humans, you have got opinions, but they are tested, I think it's 4 times a year, am I right? The standards checks, they call them standards checks, where basically an examiner sits in the back of their tests and test them to make sure they are testing the right things. Anything that they say you must be backed up by essential skills or legislation, and nowhere the legislation does it say you must wait until they're the other side. So it says you must give way. So let's use another example. So zebra crossings don't have any more legal right, taking away the zigzag lines because they're a bit different, but someone crossing the road has no more legal right crossing the road at a zebra than they do crossing the road with no zebra. There's nothing different. If someone steps on the road, you must give way to them. So if you were going down the road and someone stepped out on the road and there wasn't a zebra, would you wait for them to get all the way the other side? You may do, but we probably don't teach that. We probably say, when it's safe, carry on. There is no difference to a zebra and a plain bit of road. Legally, there is no difference. The only reason they put zebras there is to stop the overtaking and to try and funnel people into an area. So more people are crossing in one area rather than trying to go down a long street and people are crossing all the way along and you'll never get to the end. So that's the reason for zebra crossings. They have no more legal right. You as a pedestrian have no more legal right. You as a driver have no legal difference, whether it's someone crossing, say, halfway down the street or a zebra crossing. It's no different. So let's use another example. You've come to a give way line at the end of the road. It's obviously give way. Someone's crossing from the left. Do we wait until they get all the way to the right before we proceed, or do we carry on when it's safe? Again, it's no legal difference. So think about how you would treat every situation in this situation, if that makes sense. And do you treat it different because there's some black and white lines than you do if there's no black and white lines? Because legally there is no difference. We give way to cars at a junction, at a crossroads, let's say. We give way to cars at a crossroads because that's all the line is on the zebra is a give way line. We give way. How long do we wait to carry on when the car has gone past? We go past as soon as it's safe, as soon as the car's gone past. You say, yeah, but it's not going to turn around. Could stop, go into reverse and come back. Yes, unlikely, but it could do. It is a bit unlikely for people to turn around and run back on a zebra crossing. I've been doing this job 30 years. I can think of one occasion where that's happened, and the clues were there. The kid was on the crossing, the mum wasn't on the crossing, the kid suddenly realised mum wasn't on the crossing and run back. So we didn't move because the clues were there. How realistic is it that people just randomly turn around and run back? It could happen, but it doesn't normally happen, and it certainly doesn't happen without some sort of clues. I don't think there's any more questions.
No, in terms of the examiners, disagreeing with examiners, and I've sat in on, I've had 5 tests in 13 years I've not sat in on, so I sit on all of them. I've only ever disagreed with a fail once. Disagree with passes all the time.
Yeah, Lou's saying that she's sat in on hundreds of tests like I have. She's only ever missed 5 for whatever reason. Never disagreed with an examiner. Never disagreed with a fail. Have disagreed with passes quite a lot, and I'm exactly the same camp. I've never taught to wait until people step off, whether it be part twos, whether it be out. The test centre at the moment doesn't have many pedestrian crossings and not sort of wide ones and stuff. But I've never taught it, and I was in Portsmouth where there's a lot of pedestrian crossings and there's a lot of long ones that if you waited you would be there forever, and as soon as the person just goes to step off the right, someone will step off on the left. And that's the problem with waiting till someone steps off to the right, is that some other bugger will step onto the left. So you guys know Portsmouth doesn't really matter, but there's a place called Palmerston Road, and it's basically a big shopping centre, shopping area, we used to be, and the test used to go through there. And if you waited until people stepped off, you would literally be there from 8 in the morning till 7 at night. It was constant. So you had to carry on when people were clear of your right and not approaching or stepped off on the left. You would have to go on there because you wouldn't go otherwise. So having a blanket rule just isn't going to work. But if you do have an examiner that says, no, you must do this, and it's not what it says in the legislation or the book, you must question it because it's not correct. Okay, but a lot of it is people tell you this, and people will say, particularly people you've not sat in on the test with or have gone up private running, with their parents, they will say, oh, I failed because I carried on at the crossing and there was someone still on it. No, you failed because the person was going to walk back, or there was 2 kids on the bike mucking about or something like that. There was clues there that something might go wrong and you didn't take action. And this is one of the issues we're saying to people, you must wait until they get off the other side, is that's all they're waiting for. They're not looking at the clues, they're just waiting for that person to step off and they're going. They're not being taught to look for clues, look for judgments. They're being taught just to, when they go from A to B, as soon as they go on A, as long as B's clear, whatever, go. But that doesn't involve judgment, whereas if they're making judgment calls, they're going to see them mucking about, they're going to see the clues that they're coming back. That reminds me of the other thing is I don't tend to call them pedestrian crossings. It sounds like semantics, but I call them crossings, and the reason for that is because if you're saying zebra crossings, you've got to wait for pedestrians, let's go back to that, wait for pedestrians, what about the cyclists? We all know that cyclists use zebra crossings, we all know cyclists use pelican crossings, puffin crossings. Yes, they shouldn't, but they do. So if we don't want to update just now, do we? No. So if we're saying look for the pedestrians, that's all you're going to see. There's a lot of scientific evidence to show that we look for what we want to see. So if we're only looking for pedestrians, we will see pedestrians, we wouldn't see a cyclist. And you think, of course I'd see a cyclist. If I'm looking for pedestrians, I'll see a cyclist. I'll try and find a video when I finish this and put up. It just shows that we only see what we look for. And most of you guys have probably seen this because it's in most training manuals now, but I'll find it and stick it up. I won't give you more than that, but we do only see what we look for. So get them to looking for everything, get them waiting for everything, regardless of the type of crossing it is. Get them looking for pedestrians, cyclists, scooters nowadays, particularly those little electric ones, skateboards, etc., etc. Try not to be judgmental, so they shouldn't use them. They shouldn't, but they do. So let's look for them. Let's give way to those as well. So it does say here, you must give way to anyone. Anyone. It doesn't say pedestrians. It says give way to anyone. Okay, so anyone on any type of vehicle. I've seen cars using zebra crossings before, and that sounds weird, but I have. So yeah, just make sure you're teaching all-round observation, all-round planning, and looking for everything, not just one particular thing. Okay, anything to add? No, okay, nothing coming up. So, and it's like anything, you can take it on board, you can not take it on board, and you'll find pupils will sometimes agree, not agree with you, but just try to sort of make sure you're teaching within the laws, because it will bite you on the bum when it comes to part 3, because the examiners will know what the books say and will know them inside out. But we're not saying as soon as the person steps past our mirror we're going to zoom off. We're making judgment calls, so sometimes we will wait till they get to the other side, sometimes we won't. You say a person with mobility problems, why are we waiting till they get all the way to the other side? So you can see that's a logical example of why we wouldn't wait. Therefore we can't always say we must wait until they step off, because you don't. Okay, thank you for that, and we will see you again soon.